As a little kid, I was really into animals. So when Pokemon came out, which was a way to engage with kind of new animals, it was pretty exciting for me. Around that same time, I had just found Super Mario RPG. And so this was kind of a blend of my video game love and my hobby of really enjoying animal facts. So was super obsessed immediately. In a randoms tournament, it's very different, right?
Right.
In those other tournaments, it's more about, can you find that combo that works well for your playstyle? In randoms, it's more about just knowledge. How well do I know every Pokemon that could be used here? And anticipate what's going to happen. I've got another fire type in the back, so I don't mind just blasting this Dodrio right in the face. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, if you're gonna do that, you should have done it earlier, right? Ooh, this is gonna be a close finish.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Skill Link podcast, where we chat and get to know passionate content creators, competitive players, and all voices who continue to make the Pokemon community incredible. Today's guest is an expert in classic Pokemon generations, from competing in and analyzing tournaments from generations 1 through 4, climbing the ladders in each, or just random battles. King Edgy is here to give you the scoop on it all. How's it going, my friend?
Oh, great. Thanks for that intro, Logan. Oh, you nailed the King Edgy. That was really good.
Thank you. I was listening back to it today. I was like, I'm going to try and get that King because I love it. I thought it was
every time.
It's so
it gets
fun.
me every time. I love it. It's like such a simple little hook, but that's great. So fantastic. No, we're excited to have you on. I was I can't remember how you popped up for me, but for whatever, I mean, I just consume a lot of Pokemon content, playing myself, playing with Logan. My brother plays a lot as well, or just watching on YouTube. And YouTube algorithm does a good job at spitting out some channels to me here and there.
Yeah.
So I think it was I think you were prepping for this recent Gen 4 random tournament, and I was like, oh, that looks really fun. And sure enough, what always gets me is I love when we hop into a battle and we're kind of like the player or the trainer is like live playing, talking through the decision making, analyzing the matchup on the field. And you did it, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. I like this. So immediately subscribed. I was following you from there. I'm like, Logan, we got to see if we can get him on. So it's a pleasure.
Thanks. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I mean, I had never played Gen 4 until March of this year.
That's crazy.
Wow.
And so, yeah,
you're doing good.
played it. It seemed to go pretty well, and then got asked to be in that tournament. So lots of fun happened very quickly. And it's always interesting learning a new generation. So as you said, I've played Gens 1 through 4 now, although 2 isn't the most fun to me. It's just
2's interesting.
It's a little bulky for my taste. But yeah, and then when I was a kid, I played 1 through 3 and then didn't really play again until Showdown came out. And when Showdown came out, 7 or 8 was the current gen, and so I picked it up kind of there. But I missed all the middle gens, so now I'm kind of going back,
catching up on them,
reliving them. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's fun.
That's awesome. I think I missed 5 and 6. Were the major ones that I missed, and it's kind of fun. I don't know. It's almost like rediscovering the game a little bit, where you go back to the ones that you missed and see what's all missing there, but then also rediscovering the originals that you loved as a kid or something like that too. And just seeing the depth of the game in each generation is actually one of the most fascinating things I think is about Pokemon. Like you said, each generation is kind of its own unique game in itself. Even though it's all Pokemon and the basics are there, but there's still a lot of differences between the two, or between all of them, I should say. But before we get further into your content, I did want to ask a little bit more about, just to kind of get to know you a little bit more. So aside from Pokemon, is there any other hobbies or interests that take up your time?
Wow. So, I mean, Pokemon's the major hobby, right?
Oh, yeah.
But, I'm actually an avid badminton player.
Very cool.
Yeah, picked it up in college, was the captain of our team in college, and competed for a little while, and then continue playing about once or twice a week, which is
That's
awesome.
super cool.
Yeah, lots and lots of fun. And outside of that and Pokemon, there's Not a ton. I mean, video games in general is a big thing. My wife and
For
I
sure.
play a lot. She's a really big presence in the Dr. Mario scene, actually. I don't know
Oh,
if
very
you've played
cool.
before. We've got right over here our little Dr. Mario amiibo, right?
I love it.
So that's a NES puzzle game from back in the 80s,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
we just went to a tournament in Connecticut in August, which was a lot of fun.
That's so cool.
And she competed. Did you?
Yeah, actually, she competed, did very well. She always competes. There's a monthly tournament that she
Wow.
does.
Wow.
So
That's incredible.
yeah, she's great. Her handle is Savage Octagon. So if you're ever interested in
Savage
following
Octagon. Well,
some,
yeah, we'll
right?
plug that. That's awesome. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
thank
That's
you.
super cool.
Yeah,
That's
I have
amazing.
my sister-in-law. I have a sister-in-law who was very into Dr. Mario too. I don't know if she
Mm.
ever got into the competitive scene, but I mean, and this is just it's kind of a Tetris cousin
right.
kind of you can say, right? And I
Hmm.
think those types of games are just super intriguing with how the reaction time needs to work and things like that. So that's incredible. That's an awesome skill. So
Yeah, it's rad. We like it a lot.
That's fun. I love the mixture. Get nice physical activity, the badminton, which I think is a very underrated sport. It's very
Oh,
fun.
indeed.
thanks. Yeah.
And then yeah, that's awesome. Love gaming with the wife there. Yeah, luckily my wife, her brothers grew up playing video games and everything like that, and I grew up playing with my brother. So now that we've been together for a few years now, she's like, she accepts the video game hobby and obsession, and I'm like, hey, we'll get you a Switch Lite, and she rocks Animal Crossing, she rocks Disney
Right.
Dreamlight, and I'm like, you got yours, and
Nice.
I got
Yeah.
mine, and we're good. So, but that's awesome though.
Nice.
I love hearing that. So,
Mm.
but now kind of you're telling us about your Pokemon journey as well. Um, did you? I know you mentioned the first few generations. Did you play the games growing up? Was it anime? Was it TCG? Was it a mix of everything? What did that look like to get you where you're at today?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty much everything. When I was 10, my mom got me Pokemon Red for my birthday. It was great. Um, Played it, and, as a little kid, I was really into animals. And so I would
Yeah.
get the, subscriptions in the mail where you'd get animal pages and facts about
Oh
different
yeah.
animals and just, liked learning all of those things. And so when Pokemon came out, which was a way to engage with kind of new animals, it was pretty exciting
Mhm.
for me. Um, Around that same time, I had just found Super Mario RPG,
Hmm.
and that
Ooh,
was my
yeah.
first exposure to RPG games. And so this was kind of a blend of my video game love and my hobby of really enjoying animal facts. So was super obsessed immediately. And my brother
Love it.
got Pokemon Blue version at the same time, and so we had we would raise things together, we would trade, we would battle. It was great. I remember one day just getting bored and deciding to start my file over, and my brother was like, "No, I need infinite rare candies to do this thing." And so I played for one day, and I got all the way through to Cinnabar Island to get the missing no glitch, and
Yep.
Yeah.
get all those candies for him. Um, but then I just, kept playing for a little while. Gold and Silver came out, played Silver version. My brother got Gold. And then similarly, I got Ruby, he got Sapphire.
Oh
And
yeah.
then he got a little too old to still be into it at that time. And so that was the last generation we played together, and it was the last generation my parents bought us the games for. So I played 1, 2, and 3 on the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and then didn't really play it that much again. Went back to Pokemon Stadium a bunch, really enjoyed that. Brought the N64 with me to college, and it was a huge hit. And people would get together, and when we weren't playing Mario Party, we were playing the mini games in Pokemon Stadium.
Yeah.
So always kind of kept that alive. And then I started teaching 2014, 2013, 2014 school year, and my office mate was on Twitch in the early days and was like, "Hey, have you seen Twitch Plays Pokemon?" And I said, "No." And so we would kind of watch it together, and we bonded over it and kind of discovered Smogon and Pokemon Showdown through that experience. And then we would just play in the office a bunch. And I got pretty good because I remembered a lot of it from when I was younger, and would play with my brother, would chat about it. Didn't really start making any videos until COVID happened, and I
Mm-hmm.
realized like, oh, I'm bored. Playing is fun, but like maybe there are other people out there, and we can make a little community going. So started doing that, but yeah, it's been now 25 years
Yeah,
of
yeah,
playing
That's
Pokemon, and
amazing.
it's great.
it's fantastic.
Yeah.
I
I
love
love
that.
it.
I love the Logan. I love the plane in the office because so
Yep.
Logan and I actually used to work together. We worked at a suit
Oh,
shop
cool.
about 6 7 years ago,
Hmm.
and there was a just like a Mac in there for customer database stuff like that. But if it's slow, we'd boot up a showdown tab and we just do random battles during the
Yeah.
slow dead hours, and we're like, yeah, this is a nice way to spend spend some slow time. So that's awesome. You said that, and I
I think
immediately
there
thought of
were
that.
Yeah, I was the same way. I think there's one night or a couple of nights I remember because the winter season was just so slow
Yeah, when it's slow winter
that
season,
I think our whole shift was playing Pokemon. Like, and it
probably
was it
was.
was such a
Oh,
party.
jeez.
Well, it's nice because
So
you trade off battles, so whoever's battling is fresher, so you can ladder quicker, right? So that's the mindset behind it. But that's cool though. I love hearing the journey, and kind of how you got to where you're at, and kind of swung back into. I think everyone we've talked to at some point, fell in love with it. Maybe a little bit of a falling away at some point or another. I mean, Pokemon's been around for 30 years now. I think at some point a lot of people have taken a bit of a hiatus, and then always
yeah,
ropes him back in. And if
Right.
it's funny, if not, I think now more so than ever, I'm into it, and dive into nitty gritty and battling. Obviously now you're older, you're kind of more on the competitive, strategic side of things, but
Right.
compared to when you're a kid, but. The nostalgia still hits home, and that's what keeps bringing us back. So that's fun. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree, but like at the same time, when Legends Arceus came out, I played that game so much and remembered the
Legends
joy
is
of
great.
just collecting and like learning the facts about the different
Oh
Pokemon.
yeah.
So it's still there for the more casual side.
Oh for sure.
I still love all the main series games,
For
even though
sure.
I haven't played a bunch of them in the middle.
I think
that's a
Scarlet and
great
Violet
shout
was
out.
definitely one where I'm just like, I'm just gonna catch, back to the roots, catch what looks cool, not worry
Hmm.
about natures, don't worry about any of that. Highest powered moves, and just have fun with it. And then post game, we'll
Yeah.
get into the nitty gritty maybe, but yeah, no, I agree. I think that's a fair point for sure. So
When I think I kept myself relatively spoiler free because I think one of the downfalls for me and a lot of the more recent titles that I've played is like with the internet, like we learn almost like the whole game before, like if
Right.
you're not
right.
careful, you can hit the spoiler bus and you learn everything beforehand. And so
Mm-hmm.
I've recently kind of taken just the route of not being on the internet around the space at all when these new games are dropping, and it has definitely been like so special to re-enter the new world. Like
Hmm.
Scarlet and Violet was amazing. Like you said, Legends Arceus was such a gem. Like it changed a lot for me where I feel like this is a staple now and like in my Pokemon like just core memories and things like
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
that. And so I think that's one thing for me that I almost feel like the modern age is kind of like needs to back off on is like spoiling everything beforehand. Like I just felt like that
Yeah.
was part of the specialness is that we
The
all kind of got to experience it, you know?
the crown jewels growing up was you have the Prima strategy guide. And I remember
Yes.
asking for
Yeah.
like my birthday for Christmas. I'm like, I have the
Mhm.
Pokemon Emerald strategy guide. This is all I need. You have early internet access and everything, early mid 2000s, of course. But you can hop on like what were some of the old websites like supercheats.com or whatever to get like some
Sure.
Game
like the
FAQs,
old
man.
game
Yeah.
FAQ, like the whole like
Hmm.
typed out game walkthrough and everything. But when you had the actual strategy guide, that's kind of all you needed, and that was fun. But
It's
anyways,
crazy because it is all you needed, but somehow I ended up with multiple strategy guides for the same game, and I wanted to cross reference the Pokedex and see, okay, is this thing really
is
four
that
foot
accurate?
eleven, or what's
Mm-hmm.
going on here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild. It was a fun time.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're gonna dive into your content now a little more. I'm curious to kind of get to know, your expertise a little bit. I was watching, your videos recently and things like that, and kind of come up with some questions. And one of them I had for you was kind of during tourney analysis or battling in a tournament in different generations. Kind of what tips or tricks would you suggest, or like how do you because like the thing is like we mentioned earlier, the generations are all different, right? And so what things do you keep in mind, and what things do you look for like in the generation that you're in? Like, does that make sense kind of as a question? It's just kind of, I think it's super interesting your variety there, and so I think it's really cool.
Yeah, sure. So it's hard to answer because every generation is so different mechanically, right? I mean,
Hmm.
from generation one, where everything can max out every stat, so they're a little bulkier, but there are no items, so you don't get leftovers recovery,
Yeah.
you don't get other things. I guess maybe I'll just start there. That's the game I've played the most. That's the game that I think is the least complicated of all of them in terms of strategy. And you think about things like in Generation 1, there are certain Pokemon that just cannot affect others, right? You get an electric type against a ground type and you're just shut down. There's no hidden
Yeah.
power ice, there's no like move set diversity really. So thinking about prioritizing those walls so that they're unbreakable, especially in a randoms battle, is really helpful. So at the same time, like you can kind of let those Pokemon get put to sleep. Sleep is super broken in Gen 1 because you can't attack on the turn you wake up, and so it's like really hard to come back from getting put to sleep. But if you put one of these walls to sleep, it can still do its job while it's asleep. So thinking about, okay, if I need something to get put to sleep, who would it be? Um, but also thinking about, like, I think more generally, you think about saving like your fastest Pokemon for last so that it could come out and sweep potentially. You think about, okay, if my last two Pokemon are this flying type and this grass type, they both have a common weakness to ice. This is setting myself up to get swept. So maybe
Hmm.
diversifying the weaknesses of my last couple Pokemon, things like that. Um, are just some common things for Gen 1 to be aware of. I think the biggest thing in any gen is just to know the Pokemon, right?
Hmm.
What are their possible move sets? How do they complement one another? Do I have a slow Pokemon that, if everything else gets paralyzed, can do a really great job? So I'll save them for
Oh
later while I
yeah.
try to paralyze things. And then as the generations go on, you think about things like, ooh, these Pokemon have choice items, so they can come out and sweep, but like I don't want to show them too early. Or,
Hmm.
ooh, this Pokemon has hazards and heavy duty boots hasn't been introduced yet. Let me get those hazards up as soon as possible so my opponent can't really switch that well. So there's just so many things.
Yeah.
Like I'm, the question is overwhelming, but hopefully that was some insight into
No,
what
that
I
was
think.
Yeah,
fantastic.
sorry, that was a
That was
little bit
perfect.
wider, but I think you answered it perfectly. That's such a good call with, especially like in like I because I'd never. It's one of those things where Gen 1 is such a like a anomaly in itself, and so it's like I forgot totally that you can't attack on the turn you wake up. Like those are things
Mhm.
that like it's such a staple now in modern Pokemon that it's
Hmm.
interesting to go back to those games and see how they're different. And I think you just did a great job at kind of expanding that and looking at the whole picture there. So thanks. That's awesome.
Sure.
Yeah. I do want to ask you as well. When you're climbing the ladder, whether it's random or whatever, whatever your purpose is, whether you're prepping for a tournament or just kind of for fun, what tips and tricks do you have for climbing? And this can be like general team building stuff. This can be something related to randoms. This can be like a general principle like stay patient, don't get too tilted. If you're too tilted, then maybe step away from the game for for a little bit. Anything like that. What works for you when you're laddering?
Yeah, I think it depends how seriously I'm laddering because
Hmm.
sometimes I'll ladder just to get practice and to see what different players are trying out, and maybe even
Right.
to try out a new strategy myself and see does this work. But most of the time, I just do it to relax, and I think
I
you
love
have to
that.
be in the right state of mind. So to that end, don't play more than 3 games in a row without taking a little break. You can
Okay.
go down the rabbit hole of the ladder real fast, and like you
Oh
said,
yeah.
Josh, if you get a little tilted and then you play 4 more games and like it's not going well,
Yep.
you can feel pretty bad pretty quickly. I know that sometimes when I get tilted, I will open 2 battles at once and then try and do that,
Try to make up the
which
elo right away, but
right, and then you just
yeah.
lose both battles because you
Yep.
can't fully pay attention. So
Yeah.
that kind of thing. But I think you have to be aware that on the ladder there are players of all ability levels.
Mhm.
So I think taking the early game and just sussing out, is your opponent making predictions or are they making straightforward plays,
Oh yeah.
is
I
kind of
love
the
that.
biggest thing for me. Because you see an opponent and you're like, okay, this opponent's got 1300 ELO, and then your next opponent has 1600, and you're like, okay, there's going to be a different strategy that I have to employ, where at, you know, the 1300, you're thinking like, okay, so I'm going to make some predictions and they're not going to expect it. And at the 1600 level, you're like, I'm going to make some bad plays because they're predicting I'll make the good play here, and kind of turning the tables.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
That's super cool. I like that a lot.
It's crazy. And plus, when you're doing random, you have that added wrinkle of obviously you have your whole team available to you, like what you have in the back, but you don't know what they have. So you're like, do I need to reveal this trump card right away? I know when I'm like, for example, now speaking specifically of random battles, if I'm doing, if I'm going against someone and I've maybe sent out, let's say 2 or 3 Pokemon so far, I want to try and prioritize sticking to those 3 unless I absolutely need to dip into that back half of my team to not reveal too much. Because the more information they have, they can make more educated and more sound decisions. And but then at the same time, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself either, just to not reveal too much. It's like it's a very interesting dynamic, and like you said, it kind of depends on experience. Like you said, it's just like getting the reps in and kind of getting used to what decisions do players generally make, especially at this ELO that you're at right now. But yeah, it's a very fascinating conversation to have. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
I think
Kind of.
there are other tools that you can use too. Like if you've seen my channel, I use the damage calculator a lot to just get a better sense of what's going on. Showdex is a little app extension on Chrome that you can use to kind of get the calculator, but in the same window.
In the showdown. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Cool. I didn't know that.
It's pretty helpful. Cool. But it tells you move sets, it tells you damage rolls. It really gives you more insight. And so, you know, you play a lot, you get the feel for, oh, this is maybe going to do 40%, but pulling up the calculator to make sure if you want to do some serious laddering, I think is also a great tip for folks.
I love that.
That's awesome. That's a really, really good idea. Kind of switching over more into the kind of the tournament sphere of your expertise, I'm curious to kind of know, like, what is it? Because there's the preparation that you have for like a tournament, though it's not random, but then there's also preparation that you have for a tournament that is random. Like, what kind of general preparation strategies do you use for tournaments? And then, like, what also, like, what tips could you also say for like random tournaments, random battle tournaments? I'm also curious about that to see how do you do well in those, you know?
Sure. So I haven't actually competed in any non-random tournaments.
Okay.
I've been on teams. Like currently I'm on a team that is like, there's a Gen 1 tournament going on right now. My team is someone playing OU, someone playing NU, someone playing, you know, ZU, all the things, including me playing randoms. And so you brainstorm, you have a Discord channel where you chat about, okay, what do you think about this lineup this time? You follow the meta and see like, okay, here's the overused common usages, and let's see if there's any Pokemon that they've missed, right? You really think about who's that diamond in the rough that can surprise folks and end up winning it all. And, you know, you think about the more competitive Pokemon scene and you realize like, oh, Pachirisu won a world championship one time because no one saw it coming and it had follow me, right? And so you think about, can you find that Pokemon no one else is using, but that surprisingly can really bring everything together. I know Wolf Glick had a really good video maybe a few months back where he talked about he brought Farigiraf and thought that this was going to surprise folks because it had Sap Sipper and no one was expecting it because everyone was expecting Armor Tail. And so just playing around with some things like that you think other people haven't caught on yet. But that said, in a randoms tournament, it's very different, right? In those other tournaments, it's more about, can you find that combo that works well for your play style that might surprise others and they're not ready for it? In randoms, it's more about just knowledge. How well do I know every Pokemon that could be used here and anticipate what's going to happen, right? Do I know that this Pokemon always gets Self-Destruct and can I switch accordingly? Or does this Pokemon always get Choice Scarf? And so if I use Protect here, it'll be locked into a particular move. So knowing those things is so helpful. And that just comes with playing the game. You can study the calculator and find out those things, but you can also study the source code, which is available for you to see like, oh, okay, 75% of the time, Bulbasaur will have Swords Dance and Body Slam, and then 25% of the time it'll get
Oh,
Stun Spore and Body Slam, right? So
Yeah.
there are things out there that you can analyze. I'm not sure if those are the exact percentages, but that's the idea. You can have a sense for what everything might know,
Yeah.
and be ready to anticipate it. You can also kind of understand how Showdown works a little bit in that, like, okay, it's coded so that you can't have 3 Pokemon with all the same weakness on your team, right?
Yes.
So
hmm.
if you see a certain trend happening, someone reveals a flying type and a water type, then maybe you know, okay, nothing else in the back is weak to electric. So
Okay.
thinking about things like that can be helpful at times. But no, really for randoms, it all just comes down to practice.
Mm.
If you can. So I was just in the World Cup of Rand Bats, and what I would do each round is I would go back and watch my opponent's previous rounds, and I would say, oh, okay, how do they play? Do they
Mhm.
make lots of aggressive predictions? Do they always make the safe play? Do they anticipate good moves coming and try to double switch or do things like that? And
Right.
then I try to use that information to my advantage, which, good players will change their play style so that you can't do that. But every now and then you get lucky and you're like, oh, I noticed this trend here and they're going to do it and I'm prepared for it.
Yeah. That's
That's so
awesome.
cool.
I love that. Those are really good insights, especially. I mean, yeah, with randoms, it really does kind of just come down to some game knowledge and just laddering for fun. And you're in. I mean, whether anyone out there is planning on doing a random tournament or just trying to ladder, it does just come down to reps. Because I know, like you said, like a I'll queue something up and they'll send out a Staraptor, and I can guess with a certain degree um, of probability that this is probably choice scarf or choice band. It's probably reckless, and I can expect either a brave bird, a U-turn, or a double,
Right.
that kind
Close
of thing,
combat.
right? I mean, Staraptor is like a pretty straightforward example. There's not a lot of different ways you can build out a Staraptor, but like as an example of that, like they can send that out, and like King Edgy can reasonably be like, hey, I can reasonably expect this and at least base a couple of branching decision making paths off of that knowledge, and that's what's really fun about that. um
I think the source code is also a huge shout out there because that's something I never even thought about was like
mm,
also understanding how the site itself generates a lot of these things and like for the basic sets and things like that for like you mentioned Bulbasaur generally having a specific set but it can also have like an alternate set here
Mhm.
and I think that's an incredibly powerful like just info to have as you're preparing and researching things that's also something that I think is just super smart to do and super interesting.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up on Josh's example of the Staraptor here, right?
yeah.
If you know your opponent, and let's say they bring out a Staraptor and you've got Parasect, right? You're reasonably sure that the player is going to click Brave Bird, but the more you know about the player, maybe actually they're going to click U-turn here, anticipating your
And
switch.
try and
And
keep
so, do
momentum.
you, right? Do you
Mm.
aggressively stay in and click Spore, knowing that
Oh,
the U-turn wouldn't knock you out? And then you do those risk management
right.
calculations in your head. Well, what's the worst that could happen if I stay in versus what's the worst that could happen if I switch out?
Hmm.
And you weigh that against what's the best that could happen if I stay in versus the
Yeah.
best that could happen if I switch out. And then you kind of go with which one you think is more in your favor.
Yeah.
That's
I get
super.
that's where
That's
the play styles of other people come into play, right? Because you can be like, hey, this
hmm.
person likes to keep momentum. If they have pivot moves, they with it's, again, like you can say like they're reasonably going to click that pivot move right here, or it's like, hey, they're hyper offense. They're going to consistently lay pressure by usually clicking the highest damage move. Or I've seen others where it's like these guys are always prioritizing status. Like I'm taking a
Right.
stun spore here, I'm taking a thunder wave, I'm taking a will o wisp, I'm taking something here, and you can kind of play around that and be like, okay, do I have my sleep immunity? Like, do I have a grass type here, or do I have a ground type to eat that thunder wave or whatever? So it's these are really fun, concepts to think about, and yeah, it's just I think random battles are so fun. It's a really
Yeah,
good way to expand your general game knowledge and the way that you kind of analyze a battle. And I like the other, just to add another point onto this, is that risk management. I don't know if you know who Pink Across is.
Mm.
We've interviewed him on the channel before. He
Oh,
does
cool.
Gen 9 OU stuff, but he's been doing a lot of just competitive showdown stuff. And he talks about this principle of making middle ground plays, which is essentially
Mm.
like you said, like, hey, what's if I click this move. What's the best thing that can happen if it works out? And if it doesn't work out, then what is that worst case scenario? What point in the battle are we? Is this the beginning of the battle? Is it the middle? Am I playing catch up? Am I ahead? Are things still pretty even? Like, is the ending still sort of vague? And you have to kind of do all these risk management calculations and branching decision making paths in your head and be like, okay, I'm willing to make this risk, like you said with the Parasect. I'm willing to take a brave bird right to the face. If Parasect goes down, it is what it is. We can play around it. But if I get that spore off on whatever comes in, then hey, I'm in this fight, right? So it's kind of fun. Or it's like, hey, do I make the conservative play? Like maybe I'm kind of ahead right now. Maybe I'm ahead a mon or two. And I kind of want to hold on to that Parasect in case I want to sleep something later. Maybe I'll switch out anyways and just kind of hope for the best and hope he doesn't U-turn. Or if he does U-turn, stay on my toes, right? So it's kind of, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, great points. Middle ground plays are really common. I think in Gen 1, it's basically just click body slam every turn. That's your middle ground play. It's a great move.
I love that.
But, I think the other thing you mentioned there is that randoms is so fun. I think the entry point for randoms is so much lower than the entry point for other formats because you don't have to build your team. And so you could just right now play a random battle. You might have no idea what you're doing, but you can still play it. Whereas if you tried to get into a different tier, you would have to maybe build a team or really put some thought into who's doing what. And so I like randoms for that reason. You can get on, you can play quickly, but it also gives you a variety that the other formats might not always, right? Especially in Gen 1 when OU is maybe 10 or 12 Pokemon, maybe. So I really appreciate the variety that you get from randoms and it helps you see things. I think even if you don't play randoms and you're a competitive player, you should, because it'll show you some synergies that maybe you wouldn't have thought of on your own. So it's just fun to see those team combinations through randoms.
You see Pokemon you never usually because in a standard competitive format there's a meta, right? And there's Pokemon that are higher usage. So you'll see certain team configurations or certain play styles or general strategies more often than others. And by consequence, they're going to be Pokemon that you don't ever see. And I think, with the random battles, first of all, I think it's just fun when I keep a random battle and be like, oh, awesome. I have a Skarmory, and you never see Skarmory in these later generations, for example, or something like that, right? It's like, oh, cool. I get to use a Pokemon that I never use. But on the other hand, you're right. It does kind of force you to see things in a different perspective. Because maybe if you do hop into more of a concrete tier, you're less likely to be caught by surprise, or you're more likely to be able to better react to something. So I really like that. That's fun.
I have a quick question on that, kind of speaking because I love how you mentioned that this is something, because like you said, there is a slight barrier with other tiers where you have to get into team building and things of that nature and kind of start building those skills. So I guess how is there any resources that you would say that would be good to or not resources, or I guess groups, or how do you get into the tournament scene on the random battles to start competing like that? Is that so this is just Smogon forums? Is it something like that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so there are a few different ways that you can get into it. There are different chat rooms on Pokemon Showdown that you can just enter at any time, lobby, awesome. Gen 1, whatever it is. And they have random tournaments, a bunch. And then you can just click enter and it'll be a little here's a quick 30-minute tournament where, the 8 people that are online right now are just put into a bracket. When you get to the more serious tournaments, it is through Smogon forums, and they'll put out a call that says something like, oh, we're hosting this tournament. Usually it'll pop up in the little info tab on Pokemon Showdown, right? They usually have a block with 2 blurbs in it. And so you click it and it brings you to a site, and then you can sign up and enter. A lot of the team competitions will have managers who then select their teams or draft their teams somehow. So you probably have to be an established player to get noticed in that situation. But for the individual tournaments, a lot of them are just enter if you want and see how it goes.
We're good. Sorry. Coming in the middle there. I was like, wait a second.
You're good.
That's awesome. This has been such a fun conversation, and I think random battles are so cool. We're gonna move on to kind of our kind of begin wrapping up our conversation, but we're gonna enter our rapid fire round. This is just kind of a fun we ask kind of some fun Pokemon questions, and off the top of your head, kind of give us your answers.
Sure.
So the first one we have for you is, who do you think the most underrated Pokemon in Gen 1 is?
Most underrated Pokemon in Gen 1. I'm gonna go with Seadra right now.
Ooh.
Oh, okay.
I think these mono water types are things that don't get really talked about that much because there are a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And I think Seadra has surprisingly good defense and special with pretty solid speed. So it doesn't get talked about a lot. It's not that flashy, but its Hydro Pump
Right.
does some great damage. It can freeze things with Blizzard. So I'm excited to see it when I get it in randoms.
Okay,
That's
I like
awesome.
that.
That's
Yeah,
super
90,
cool.
95 defense, 95 special. Um,
Oh yeah, that is
yeah.
really really good.
Yeah, right?
Okay.
Surprisingly good.
Yeah, I feel like that's one I just
Go
even
Seadra.
even when I was a kid and just casually playing, I feel like I never
No,
used
why
it. And
would
then
you
and
ever get... Yeah, yeah.
right, that's what I'm saying. So that's cool. I like that. That's a really good shout out. I love that one.
Mhm.
All right, next rapid fire question I got for you. Is there a Gen 1 mechanic that you would like to see brought back? I know Gen 1 mechanics are just it's somewhat controversial because a lot of stuff is broken or quirky or very different to what we know today. But is
Yep.
there one in particular where I actually kind of like that adds a fun wrinkle to battling?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my favorite one is that if you use explosion into someone's substitute, you don't faint. Your sprite
Oh.
disappears, but you are still welcome to battle. And so I would love to see that back, kind of like I took out your substitute, but that
I,
doesn't affect me. I think
ooh,
would be so much fun.
I like that.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, it's also hilarious
That's
whenever I
very
do it
funny.
on Showdown in Gen 1. It's
That's
great.
very funny. One, so Logan and I right now are playing a ROM hack of Pokemon Emerald called Elite Redux, and there's like a ton of new custom abilities and stuff like that, mainly to make a lot of lesser used Pokemon a lot more viable with some of these interesting
Hmm.
abilities. And I know one of the big Gen 1 quirks is that obviously if you KO with Hyper Beam, you don't have to do the recharge.
Yup.
There's an ability called Rampage, which is effectively that, where if you kill
Oh, nice.
or knock out, you don't have to recharge. I don't know how broken. I would probably pretty broken, right? So maybe not, but I think it's kind of fun because I guess Logan, in game it is pretty busted because you can do like Giga Impact or whatever you want and something. Then you don't have to worry
No,
about
no
the recharge
callback.
as long as you knock out. But um, that's fun. I do
I
like
kind of
that
love
shout
that
out
one
you
too.
made. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that. I like the explosion substitute one. Reward the high level explosion read. I took out your substitute. Let me stay alive. So I mean,
Yeah, I mean, because
amazing.
as a kid, I always wondered why like self destruct had 5 pp because you
Yeah,
use it and you're dead, right?
yeah,
Oh
And
yeah, that's
this
a good
was
question.
yeah, no, this was a great answer to that question potentially.
beautiful.
That's amazing. All right, the next one we have for you is, what is your favorite move animation? So like your favorite the Pokemon move,
Yeah, does it in a particular gen or just
You can
ever?
pick. Yeah, whatever you want.
whatever you
I can
want.
pick.
Yeah.
Wow. Um, I think I'm gonna go with Meteor Mash.
Ooh,
I
yeah.
Okay.
like it a lot. I think I don't know. In Gen 3, I really liked. I really started getting behind steel types in a way. In Gen 2, I
Hmm.
didn't. And so seeing that move from a Metagross the first time, I was like, whoa, this is so cool. And then over the years, it has continued to like be kind of a wow move. I think they've put stock in the animation for it, and I appreciate
Right.
that.
I love that. That's a really good one.
That's great.
Last rapid fire question we got for you is what's your favorite side franchise game? So you mentioned obviously Legends Arceus. You mentioned the nostalgia with Pokemon Stadium, but is it one of those two? Is it another one like Coliseum, Battle Revolution, anything like that?
Oh
Um,
yeah, I'm gonna go with Pokemon Pinball, the original one for
Ooh,
oh
the Game
yeah.
yeah,
Boy. That
that's a good
game's
one.
amazing. I
And
would
yeah,
play it on, I had the Super Game Boy, which was a cartridge that goes in your SNES, and then you
right.
could play Game Boy games on it. I would play that so much. It the cartridge itself for Pokemon Pinball had a slot for a battery, which is surprising, and you could put it in the game, and it would like have the rumble feature that that other games would have at the time through the N64, which was cool. But when I got it, it was around the time when every computer had that like Galaxy pinball on it, and so it was like kind of cool. And then it was Pokemon themed, so it was just awesome. I like the music of it. I'll give another shout out for the Pokemon trading card game.
That's
game
a classic.
Which
that's
is incredible, music phenomenal. But the pinball was a lot of fun. You still got to collect the Pokemon in it, which was very cool.
That's a good awesome. Call out. That's a great call
great
out.
Shout out. Great shout out.
Awesome. Well, we got some good answers out of you. So for our last section here, this is another kind of fun Pokemon franchise related section. We call it our shower thoughts. And this is those kind of miscellaneous thoughts that come to your head when you're out and about, you're in the shower, you are driving to work, you're at the gym, wherever you're at. And these interesting, deep, introspective Pokemon thoughts come to you. And you're like, what if they did this? Or wonder what this is. So we have a couple of those for you. Sure. The one I have for you is we thought this was really interesting. So in Johto, we have the ruins of Alph, and these are the ruins that are filled with the unknown, with all the slide puzzles and everything like that. But it's mostly known that's just where you find all the unknown. If you were, let's say you're teaching a class in the Pokemon world for your students here, what is the history lesson behind the ruins of Alph? What's the origin story there? What's the mystery?
Wow, what a great question. I think that because the slide puzzles are of the fossil Pokemon, that this is an ancient kind of shrine here, right? And essentially the idea is that when, back in the before times, all of these Pokemon roamed the land and they were all doing their thing. And I think it's going to tie into the Great Fire that swept through Ecruteak City that not only killed the beast that became the legendary trio, but also was the extinction event for the fossil Pokemon. Ho-Oh revived the beast, but wasn't able to revive the fossil Pokemon, and so the people of Johto built these shrines to commemorate them.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Look at that.
That's amazing.
We got to contact the Pokemon company and make that canon. That's incredible. I really like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we were talking about that, and sorry, Logan, you go. I was gonna say we were thinking about that. I was gonna
say Legends Alph is coming out. I mean, that's gonna be the next one after ZA, and I think that sounds Legends amazing to me.
Legends Alph, that's amazing. I think there is definitely some untapped potential with the unknown. I feel like you can do some really fun stuff with that.
I mean, they had the Pokemon third movie was all about the unknown, the illusions they could create, all this stuff. And then in game, they're so lame.
They're very I always wanted them to do something sort of like with Wishy-Washy's schooling, maybe like some conglomerate of unknown, and they make maybe some like creepy entity shaped, like where they're kind of just like all together group form. They're like this really powerful something or whatever, but or something with an illusion. Or I mean, I know Zoroark kind of took the thunder with the illusion, but I think Unknown kind of had claim to the illusions before Zoroark ever did. But I
think if you look at the Unknown trading cards, right, like Unknown N jumps to my mind because its ability was like, oh, now things resist normal type attacks. And it would be cool if by letter they could have resistances, things like that. But having them all just have the ability levitate, I think it would be cool if they had abilities designed for their letters.
That'd be really, really cool. Like, that's an awesome idea. There's so much to do with that little section of the game and the lore behind it. Like, I mean, Gen 4, like, there's that special event where you can even go to the Sinjo area from the ruins of Alph, and there's Arceus related stuff there. I think that's such a clever idea, giving them their own abilities, just making it bigger than what it used to be. So I love that. I think that's great. The next shower thought question that we have for you is going to be Gen 10 is coming out, but to have it, you need to remove an entire generation of Pokemon. What generation is out?
Wow. So this is tough. I have never played the main series games for 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8.
Okay.
So I think I can't say any of those because I don't know them well enough, and it might be the
Oh,
wrong
Fair
okay.
way.
enough. Fair
So I
enough.
can only comment on 1, 2, 3, or 9,
Ooh.
which is tough because as a kid I hated Gen 3. As an adult, I like it
Oh.
much more, but as a kid, I did not like it. I didn't like that you couldn't max out the stats anymore because grinding was one of the things I loved to do in these games, even though
Mm-hmm.
everyone hates it. Um, but I think, honestly, I'd probably wipe out Gen 9 because it's the newest. It has the
Fair
least
enough.
nostalgia for me. It
Hmm.
has I don't know, the terastallizing is like fine, but I don't think it's great. Yeah, it hasn't proven to stand the test of time yet, and Gens 1, 2, and
Yeah.
3, I think, all
For sure.
have such fundamental things. You can never get rid of Gen 1, because if you did, there's no franchise. Gen 2 introduced Dark and Steel and items,
Mm-hmm.
which were all huge, and Gen 3 introduced abilities.
Yeah,
So I don't think you can get rid of any of those because of what they introduced. So I
that's
guess
fair.
I'd take Gen 9.
That's fair. I will ask you though. I
Nice.
did notice that you are doing some Gen 9 random battles. Have you been enjoying those, or just the overall Gen 9 meta, or maybe using Pokemon that you aren't maybe aren't as familiar with? 'Cause I know you said that the gap between Gen 4 and 8. So have you been enjoying the Gen 9 randoms?
Yeah, so so a few years back, right after we got married, my wife and I decided that our Valentine's gifts each year would be a video game for one
Okay.
another, and so she
That's
got
super
me
cool.
Pokemon Violet a couple of years ago now,
Yeah.
and playing through it was fun. I got to know some different Pokemon, so I picked up the Gen 9 on Showdown as well,
Mm-hmm.
and tons of fun, really interesting. I think
Mm.
being able to terastallize is like, when do you do it? When do you bluff that you're doing it? That sort
It's
of thing.
tricky.
But I really appreciated a couple months ago, they started doing this fun event on Showdown where you would earn a medal if you were in the top 100 on the ladder, and each month it would reset. So there's a little Hall of Fame button now on the ladder that you could click, and you could visit the past month's rankings. And I think that sparked some of my interest in Gen 9 too,
Okay.
just getting to play a bunch and seeing how that went. And Yeah, no, it's a fun generation. It's very different, but
It's
very
very
fun.
different. Yeah. That's cool though. I thought I'd ask. That's fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, again, we just wanted to thank you again so much for giving us some of your time. We know you're busy. We know you have a lot going on. And, kind of as we're wrapping up, we like to give time over to our guests to be able to kind of take a moment to self-plug if there's anything you have coming up that you want to kind of tease for your content or anything like that. And then also, we love to ask for any nuggets of wisdom that you can give to our viewers, whether that be Pokemon advice, whether that be life advice. And so we kind of just had to give up the floor over to you there.
Sure. All right. Well, I've got two plugs, I guess. First is a shout out. I was just on the U.S. Northeast random battles team for the World Cup of Random Battles, and that team was amazing. We had really good chemistry. We liked each other. We just liked talking to each other and hanging out, and had fun battling. We actually won the World Cup this past Sunday, which was unbelievable. We beat Oceania in the finals of a really well played tournament by everyone on my team. So I'm particularly going to shout out a user by the name Alpha Male Psyduck. He goes by Amp. He played in Gen 1 for
Yeah.
us in that tournament. I played in Gen 4, and he went 8-1, which is just unbelievable. Played so well. I was really happy to see that, especially as a Gen 1 player myself. I was just so impressed by his plays. It was great. Um, there is a tournament that is starting this week. That was a draft league, so a bunch of managers just drafted players, and it's exclusively Gen 1. I think it's called RBYPL, and I'll be
Ooh.
playing in the randoms format there, best of 5 series starting this week, and it'll be, I think, 5 weeks long, one series a week, something like that. So you can check that out. We'll be back to Gen 1, I hope. My Gen 4 plays don't get me confused with what's what in Gen 1, but that'll be really good. Um, as far as advice, so I'm going to put on my teacher hat for a moment and say studying probability is so helpful for basically anything you'll do in life. The risk management, the middle ground plays that we were talking about earlier, like absolutely. But even just things like, should I use Thunder or Thunderbolt? Like, what's the expected value of the damage here that I'm rolling? But more than that, I think anytime you're making hard decisions in life, being able to take that step back and say, well, okay, what is the worst possible situation and the best possible situation of this decision? And do I aim for that middle ground play, or is the risk worth the possible bad outcome? I think just applying those problem-solving techniques to life is really, really important. It's something that I talk about in math class every day, that when we talk about things like understand the problem, make the plan for how you'll solve it, reflect on your solution, things like that, it applies so far beyond the classroom. And just be a reflective practitioner in whatever you do, and continue to make decisions by really thinking through what you're going to do and what the risks are. And I think you'll set yourself up for a rewarding and enjoyable life.
I love it so much. That was great. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you. And everybody go check out King Edgy's channel. Keep an eye out for those amazing tournaments that he's going to be a part of, and shout out to his team for that victory. That's awesome. I watched an analysis of one of Amp's games earlier today, and so I know that you're a good friend of his, and he seems to be a champion at heart. So that's awesome to hear.
Oh, yeah, so good.
And then. As always, keep up with Josh and I here. We will be continuing to, get with more guests. We'll be going to be practicing our team building skills here in the next couple of weeks, and then we are also going to continue on with our Elite Redux challenge run of Pokemon Nuzlocke. So keep up with us here. And until next time, this is Logan, Josh, and King Edgy. We'll see you guys.
See you, everyone.
Thank you so much.